perhaps it's time to move on. Moving on now to number 9, we have voodoo. This one was posted to the No Sleep subreddit. The person who posted it has since deleted their account. Suspicious, but this is what they said. Okay, so I was clearing out my family member's attic in their very old home. I find this wedged inside the wall. It looks obviously handmade and its eyes and mouth are the creepiest. It also has a small pin needle sticking into its back. I can't make out any writing or tags on the doll, but it does have a small wooden stand underneath with some odd engravings. The hair also appears to be real. Check these pictures out. What do you think? What is that? What is it? Is that real hair for its beard? I don't even want to know. I think it's a voodoo doll, right? It's got to be. It looks quite realistic and it has a pin coming out of its back. I don't know very much about voodoo, but I do know if there's a pin sticking out of a doll's back, maybe run a mile. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the murder. This one comes from Reddit user Gobo in Outer Space. They said, while clearing out an attic space, I found some 30-plus-year-old letters written to my dad from his mother. She had died 20 years or so before. I read the letters and realized they were written to him while he was in prison. I asked my mom about the letters and she admitted to me that my dad had been in prison for murder. My dad still doesn't know I know. Okay, talk about family secrets there. How would you guys feel if you found out that one of your parents was a convicted murderer? That's a lot to deal with. Would you confront them about it? Or would you just try and forget and carry on like nothing happened? It's going to be pretty intense either way. Coming in at number 7 now, we have backbone. This one comes from Reddit user Haplessru. They said, a girl I know went into the basement of the old house that she was renting and found a spine in the ceiling. It was an unfinished ceiling. She called the landlord and he quickly said it was a dog spine, took it and left. Later she went to check out a noise in the attic, and when she opened the attic door, a ton of crayons showered down on top of her. Okay, so let's ignore the crayons bit for now. I think that's kind of beside the point. Let's focus on the spine in the attic. Who is the first person you would call if you found a spine in the attic of a house you were renting? I think most people would say the police. You'd be very suspicious of your landlord. Instead, this person calls the landlord, who swings by to collect it and tells them it's a dog spine before quickly leaving. Okay, and you're just gonna take their word for it, are you? It might just be a dog spine. That's fair. That's still quite weird though. But if it's not, they may have just helped a murderer get away with a murder, and it might be their spine next. I don't know, just my theory. Next up, number 6 now, we have the attic. Yes, this one is called the attic because it's not really what they found in the attic that's scary, it's the attic itself. It was posted to Reddit by user Nukestorm. They said, there's a f***ed up room in the attic where I just moved into, pretty sure nothing good happened there. Well, as you can see from the first few pictures, it looks normal at first, but soon we enter a room. The room looks like a cell for containing a person, keeping them captive. There was a small cot, a shelf, and a tiny window, and that was it. The door had a metal grate on the inside and outside of it, and the ceiling was a little over 4 feet. What do you think that room was used for? It can get quite concerning if you let your imagination run away with you there. Moving on to number 5 now, we have baby. In 2012, Reddit user Soul Biscuits made a post called Mysterious Picture of a Creepy Baby We Found in Our Attic. Here's the picture. Yes, I think I can confirm that is creepy. Creepy confirmed. Another Redditor called And Every Breath posted some helpful context to the picture. He said it was from the Victorian era and added that back then a child gets very sick and it's obvious that she or he will die shortly. Before calling friends and family or funeral directors, the family would rush to find a photographer. Sometimes the child would be photographed alive and extremely ill. These are disturbing but mostly sad. That being said, the photographer didn't always get there in time, and thus we have pictures of dead children. Well, I hoped an explanation would make me feel better about that picture, but I think it makes it a little bit more disturbing if I'm honest. Next up, number 4 now, we have One Eye Shut. This one comes from The General 123. They said, I'm a contractor. Went on a walkthrough of an estate sale property with a customer and his real estate agent to inspect the house and plan renovations. I climbed into the attic and came face to face with a giant glass eye doll. You know the ones when you lay them back, the eyes close. Damn thing was 4 feet tall, laying on its side and right in my face, with one eye open and one half freaking shut. but I was a little weirded out. I told the customer to take a look. He climbed up and was a little freaked out. The real estate agent climbed up and jumped back down screaming. I still chuckle over that one. Well, I'm glad they can chuckle because that sounds more than a little bit scary. A 4-foot doll is massive. I think just seeing that in the dark alone would have scared me, but the eyes, yeah, that would have sent me scuttling back down the attic ladder. Both eyes shut is fine, both eyes open is scary, but one of each, that's pretty terrifying. Don't wink at me, big creepy doll. Close your eyes.
Eve to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where you can do whatever you want. You can have really relaxed, slow-paced stuff where you can take it easy. Or you could be on the edge of your seat, shaking, making split-second decisions. This is Eve. You know, it's a crazy universe where anything can happen, and however you want to do it, go for it. I would describe myself as a kind of a...
Moving on now to number 3, we have Monkey Business. This one was posted to the creepy subreddit by Mostly Grapes. It doesn't need much of an introduction. Let's take a look at the picture. Wow, look at the teeth, look at the eyes, look at the weird bit of monkey skull coming through the top of its exposed head, look at the creepy nail polished fingers, look at the dislocated monkey paws. It's just pure horror, classic horror. I don't even know what to add other than to tell you guys that the top comment simply says, if it starts clapping, someone is gonna die. And I think that's a fair assessment. My gut reaction when I saw this is that it should be destroyed, but if it's cursed, I think the curse would just get passed on to you. I think that's why this monkey continues to be allowed to exist. Moving on now to number 2, we have the uncle. This one comes from 40-year-old Creeper, that's their username. They said, I lived in a beautiful Victoria house that was so spooky. It had been in my boyfriend's family for many generations. In the attic was tons of clothes from his grandparents, just all boxed up and untouched for a long time. I guess the grandpa fell over and died in the living room, and then a few days later the grandma died in the dining room, both of unknown causes. I found a handwritten journal in the attic, which was all stories of his uncle's adventures. His uncle would explore and chart jungles. There was an entry where he found dead cut-up bodies of a tribe he thought might be hunting and eating another tribe. When I found a photo of the uncle, I was so freaked out. He looked exactly like my boyfriend. They named him after his uncle as well. He always hated that. The family didn't like to talk about the uncle. He went missing in the jungle and they never found a body. We also found an old Victorian photo album of his relatives. If you've ever seen them, they're so spooky. Some of the photos have babies in them that were perfectly crisp and their eyes look glazed over. Since then, I learned that it was most likely because the babies were dead when the photos were taken. That house always freaked me out. When I first read this, I thought the whole cannibalistic tribe thing was going to be the creepy part of this story, and then it just throws in dead babies in the end right there. That will always raise a scary story by at least 1 point. And finally, number 1 now, we have Separation. This is a short but horrifying one from Rody on Reddit. They're a realtor who said one day they did a property inspection and in their words, it turned up a dead body in the attic. It was a suicide. Someone hung themselves. Homeowner thought her husband had left her years ago. I guess he did. Yeah, I mean, I guess he did. That's horrifying though. It's one of those things where you think, how did she not know? Would you guys know if there was a dead body in your attic? I don't want to go into the grisly details about how you'd know, but surely you'd know, right? Or maybe it's not as easy to detect these kind of things. Perhaps there are a lot of dead bodies sitting in attics that we don't even know about. As a thought.
Number 10. Stalker Shrine. A group of housemates made a strange and unnerving discovery when they decided to venture into the attic of their rented home. They found what appears to be the shrine of a stalker, complete with discarded clothes, faded photographs on the walls, and sealed bags containing unused plasters, cigarette ends, and what seems to be human hair. Honestly, if it wasn't there for all of us to see, you'd have to believe it was made up for a horror film, said Matt Martin, whose girlfriend is one of the renters. He added, the film photos on the wall appear to be from the 1990s at some point and show a football player and another bloke. There were also some mystery liquids in bags attached to the wall, but it's not even worth finding out what they were. The group informed the estate agents, who in turn told the landlord. Apparently, the landlord was warned by builders who renovated the house that there was something strange up there, but they must have never been up to check. The group also contacted the police about what they discovered. They added, "We called the hotline and they pretty much just said if there's no body parts, don't worry about it." But no offense, I would be worried about it. That is completely unnerving. Number 9. A mummy. A young boy from Germany played in his grandparents' attic when he discovered a set of suspicious-looking boxes. When the boy inquired about the boxes, neither his father nor grandma knew what they contained. They opened them, and in the largest box contained a real mummy. The mummy, carefully packed in a wooden crate, was placed inside a sarcophagus complete with hieroglyphic adornments. The family later discovered that the item belonged to their grandfather, who had traveled to North Africa when relics from ancient Egypt were in demand. Curious to discover if the mummy was real, the young boy's father took the object to Berlin to show expert archaeologists. Now, I feel like that's just kind of gross, knowing that you've been living with essentially a dead body. Ugh. And if the movies are anything to go by, that family should have kept the mummy inside the coffin to avoid a huge curse. Number 8. Ghost footprints. A Reddit user wrote about their creepy experience by saying, "When we first moved into my house, the house I currently reside in 20 years ago, I wandered up to the attic to stack some boxes. Most of the attic is covered in that white powdery stuff that you're not supposed to walk on, or else you might fall through the floor. The old owners put wooden planks over the beams on half of the attic so we could walk there and stack storage and everything. The creepy thing is, there were several large footprints in the powder. When I showed my dad, he was just as baffled as I was, because again, if anyone stepped there, they would have fallen right through. And the footprints were between the beams, as if whoever was there stepped over the beams, which would have been the only stable parts to walk on. The footprints are still there 20 years later, and it still weirds me out. It would weird me out too, and I think they have a giant ghost living in that attic." Number 7. A strange collection. Being at your grandparents' house can be fun, until it isn't. This user said, "My grandparents' house is over 150 years old and used to be a post office. I wanted to go up there my whole life, and when I finally did, I found a suitcase full of hair, an old piece of a clock, some 1920s underwear and clothing, and a couple of old trunks, mostly empty, but a couple of pictures in one with hair. My papa used to say if I went upstairs or heard a creak in the house, that an old bald-headed woman was sitting up there in her rocking chair waiting to get me. Really creeped me out as a kid, still won't go up there at night alone, and let me just say, they're braver than me because I just wouldn't go up there in general." Number 6.
Do you want to play the latest PC games, but your computer looks like this? So you're stuck playing games like these. We got you. Tap into the Elite Gamer Network with high-speed connections to GeForce Now and thousands of games. Stream from world-class NVIDIA GPUs and play the latest games on the highest settings, even if your computer is a potato. We're giving away 3 months of NVIDIA GeForce Now's Ultimate Membership to anyone who subscribes to Elite Gamer's 3-month or 12-month cloud plan. Try Elite Gamer absolutely free for 7 days and see the difference for yourself.
Did you know that you could get $50,000 to over $150,000 of investment capital at 0% interest rates to fund any business or investment that you want? That's right, you could quickly and easily access $50,000 to over $150,000 of free money in less than 30 days to invest in guaranteed businesses and investments, all without having to risk your own cash or credit. And this is even despite all the craziness that's going on in the economy right now. It's true. There's a little-known funding hack only used by the wealthiest investors in America right now, called 0% interest funding. And 0% interest funding is exactly what it sounds like. It's free money that comes without any interest that you can use to invest into businesses or investments to generate passive income. And this allows you to take advantage of investment opportunities you want to pursue without being limited by the money that you have saved up or being forced to pay interest and fees to credit cards or risky business loans. And in a very short time frame, often in less than 30 days, you can access this abundant amount of capital. If that sounds interesting to you, click on this ad. I'll show you exactly how it works. Otherwise, you can click skip on this ad. So my name is Andrew Mbesi, and I didn't create my income streams overnight, and certainly didn't get any handouts in the beginning either. Just like most people, I had to build my streams of income the hard way until I learned how to use 0% interest funding. And that's when I became no longer limited by capital to scale my investments or rely on banks and investors to profit a bigger piece of the pie for myself. Since I learned about this funding hack, I've obtained over $250,000 of 0% interest funding in less than 12 months. And now that makes me passive income upward of 7 figures per year, all without requiring a penny of my savings. And after I found success with this funding hack, I worked with hundreds of other people one-on-one and showed them how to successfully implement this strategy to fund their properties, stock and crypto investments, and business investments to net even bigger returns than they could have obtained on their own by backing them with a guarantee of $100,000 minimum of 0% interest funding while working together. Now, for the first time ever, I'm sharing exactly how you can unlock the secrets of 0% interest funding for yourself. And this is something that only the wealthiest investors in the world know about that allow them to become more wealthy and blow past the average investor. I'm not going to be doing this forever, so I invite you to my free workshop today to learn exactly how you can do this. You can click on this video to learn more. And no, this isn't some hour-long webinar where you're asked to buy something at the end. I put this together because I'm tired of watching everyday people just like you and I get ripped off. This workshop will allow you to learn the secrets the big funding companies, online gurus, and wealthiest investors in America don't want you to know, because they're afraid if you knew this information, you'd become too powerful and would overthrow their businesses. Sounds crazy, but honestly true. They wouldn't exist if you knew the secrets that they sell to their clients. So today, I won't be doing this forever. I'm unraveling all of the secrets for free. So click the link in this video. You won't want to miss your chance to learn this funding hack that so many people don't want you to know. This could be the major difference between you being an average investor or a wealthy investor yourself. And it's probably as long as the YouTube video you're about to watch. So take a moment and learn for yourself, and I'll see you on the inside. And if you're still watching this and still skeptical, no, I'm not one of those fake online business gurus you see online. You can actually investigate my profiles on Facebook and Instagram and dig into my personal life if you so desire to see the support I have gotten from family and friends throughout my journey to become financially independent. So with all of that said, I don't want to see you stuck in your current situation. The only way out is to take steps forward, so click the link on this video. This workshop won't last forever, and I look forward to taking you from an average investor to a wealthy investor, unraveling all the secrets the top investors and lenders do not want you to know. Click the link, and I will see you inside the workshop.
Python. If you're afraid of snakes, then this is your worst nightmare. When an Idaho family moved into their new house, they were shocked when an installation crew discovered a 3-foot-long African ball python. So what's so scary about the snake? In Idaho and even the larger United States, pythons are extremely rare. People import exotics into the country through special rights, but the good thing was that because of the attic's dry heat, the snake was dead and well preserved for about 2 years. With the deadly snake no longer a threat to the family, they inquired to whether the previous owner owned it as a pet. To their amazement, no one had any idea how the python could have ended up in the house. And all I can say is, thank God it wasn't alive. Number 5. Henry VI's head. Yep, just his whole head, chilling in someone's attic. Let me explain the events that led to this. King Henry VI ruled France in 1589. One of his most notable achievements was ending the war between Catholic and Protestant citizens. By royal decree, Henry VI introduced a policy of religious tolerance, bringing peace and earning the title of Le Bon Roi, or the Good King. But in 1610, Henry VI was assassinated because of his beliefs. When the monarch fell and the French Revolution took over, the remains of monarchs were destroyed. But as fate would have it, Henry VI's head survived. In 1919, a photographer purchased the royal's head from an auction, and in 1955, Jacques Bellinaire, a tax collector, became the new owner. In 2010, the same royal head surfaced again after it was discovered preserved in an attic. With the aid of computers and forensics, Philip Cherrier, an anthropologist and medical doctor, proved that the head belonged to Henry VI. Number 4. Baby carriages. What happens to baby carriages after kids grow up? You can put them in storage or sell them. Not, I don't know, put dead animals in them. Well, that's what these people did. You heard that right. A team of investigators stumbled upon a collection of vintage baby carriages with some appalling occupants. Each carriage had a well-preserved small animal corpse swaddled perfectly and placed within the compartment. The spooky discovery at a 200-year-old farmhouse in Ossing, New York was shocking to say the least. They found the total of 10 animals, including dogs, cats, raccoons, and squirrels. The careful planning and detail suggests that the creative or sick mind that conjured the idea designed the scene intentionally. Vintage houses are known to harbor some strange things, but this discovery takes it to a whole new level. Personally, if I came across this in my attic, I think I would cry. Number 3. The photo. One woman has been searching for answers after discovering a creepy picture hidden underneath a box in her attic. She explained how she was clearing out the family's vacation home when she came across a scratched up Polaroid with the words, "Do you see him?" written on it. Creeped out by her discovery, she has taken to Reddit to see whether anyone can make out a figure in the image. She said, "I found it while cleaning out my family vacation home. I tried cleaning the picture as much as I could, but it's really scratched up. I can't really even see anything, just an outline of a house, and I don't see an outline of a person. I will try to look for more." She went on to explain how a couple lived in the house before her family bought it as their vacation home. But her dad tasked her with cleaning it out so they could put it on the market to sell. While most users urged her to stop looking for him and get out of there, others tried to invert the photograph to see whether they could see a man hiding in the image. Number 2. The message. A man claims to have made a disturbing discovery in the attic space of his girlfriend's house, and it's terrifying. In a post shared to Reddit, a man shared a picture of what he unearthed while exploring his partner's attic. Hidden in the back beyond the beams, plaster, and gathering cobwebs, he found a simple yet terrifying message scratched into the back wall. The discovery of a pentagram's 5-pointed star associated with the worship of Satan alongside the name Nick. Now, the discovery might have been okay were it not for the fact that, according to the man sharing the image, his name just so happens to be Nick. One commenter wrote, "As a fellow Nick, I'd say get the F out of there, run brother run." But another user noted that the use of the name Nick may have more serious connotations. Old Nick is another name for the devil, they wrote. And they're right. The Collins Dictionary confirms Old Nick as a jocular name for Satan. Other people are suggesting that the man's girlfriend likely carved it in herself and is just lying to him. However, some wondered if they were being a bit too quick to dismiss it. You know, in horror movies when nobody believes the guy trying to warn everyone, we are totally them, someone commented. I'm sorry, but what are the chances that it was his exact name? That is some creepy stuff, let me tell you. And coming in at number 1 is the X. Okay, so you've heard of random people living in others' attics, but what if you found out your ex was living there? Well, that actually happened to one Pittsburgh woman. The single mother of 5 discovered her ex of 12 years living in her attic. A few weeks before the discovery, the woman noticed things going awry in her house, but she couldn't explain the changes. On the weirdest days, she would find a blanket in the basement or a toilet seat left up, and even hear some unusual noises around the house. Then, one Saturday morning, she heard a noise coming from her bedroom. When she went to look, she found her ex standing there. Her ex allegedly grabbed her and put a hand over her mouth. She managed to push him away and ran outside screaming, prompting several neighbors to call 911. It said that the woman had obtained a restraining order against the man, barring him from having any contact with his ex or her children. Speaking with WPXI News, the woman said she had a weird feeling that someone had been in her home. She said, "I had an intuition about it, but I ignored it. I brushed it aside. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but I should have trusted my instincts because I was right." Once police arrived, officers searched the house and found her ex hiding under some clothes on the second floor. According to the Post-Gazette, the suspect told officers discovers he had been staying in the home for about 2 weeks without the woman knowing, gaining access through an unlocked side door. He said he was coming and going from the house because he was tired of being homeless. Now, that is truly terrifying, and now I never want to date anyone ever again.
10. A tombstone. And I'm not talking about...
So I just got out of the shower. That's where I come up with the best ideas. You could probably relate. And that's exactly where I came up with the idea of a business model that's generated me a little over $1.5 million in passive cash flow in the past couple years. Now, I'm a nobody. I used to be cooking fries over at a fast food restaurant, and now I have multi-million-dollar views. So how exactly can you implement this into your life to be able to get some of the results that I've seen? In fact, we've helped clients, over 200 clients, get amazing results, and you
I'm talking about literally the thing that has all your contact information on it after you die. It was labeled Judith, wife of Josiah Ambrose. She died August 7th, 1864. It's unknown why the grave marker was stashed away in someone's attic. Some of the comments suggest that because the gravestone was dated all the way back in 1864, that the body might be buried on the property. So the gravestone was removed because that's obviously not good for the market value. Other people are saying that it might be a prop. All this stuff kind of creeps me out. I don't know why you would want to be buried. Like, I want to get cremated, and then I want to have my ashes spread over a Five Guys. I love Five Guys. Number 9, do you see him? This one literally gave me chills. Let's say you have a nice vacation home, you go there a few times a year, you're Mr. Moneybags, life's good. That's until you go up to your attic and you find this, a pitch black Polaroid with scratches all over it. And the message, do you see him? Oh my God, this creeps me out. How did it get there? Was it placed there before you bought the place? Or did someone come in and leave it for you? I've broken it down to 2 possible scenarios. 1, the picture was taken by a child in an attempt to make a portrait of their sibling, and their finger was over the lens, and then they wrote this cute little message on it. Or 2, this is the beginning of a person's torment from a demonic presence. As time goes on, the image will slowly become clearer until it's the last horrifying thing they see before they die. It's the only 2 logical options. 8, a dead bird with a secret. All sorts of creepy animals and creepy crawlies can work their way into your home. It's happened to me. I used to live in a place with 4 guys. There was mice in the basement and raccoons in the ceiling. Paying rent really makes you respect your parents. But we never found anything as crazy as this. Genre posted on Imager back in 2014 a picture of a pigeon skeleton. Not particularly scary, but what is much freakier is what's attached to its leg. It has a little red case on it with a coded message. It's suspected to be a World War II secret code that no one has been able to crack. A historian by the name of Gord Young claimed to have solved it, but those claims turned out to be false. So really you have no idea what this message says. It could be a deep, dark secret, or my Five Guys order. I love Five Guys. Number 7, a Ouija board. Have you ever wanted to talk to the dead or mess around with demonic forces? Are you tempted by the dark arts or intrigued by evil? No, me neither. I want to watch MTV series and order food on Uber Eats and be told that I'm pretty. That's it. So if I found this in my attic, I would freak out. A couple found an antique wooden Ouija board in their home. They found it in pristine condition as if someone had been taking care of it. Their comments on the finding were, "We haven't disturbed the Ouija board." I would disturb it. I would throw it to the bottom of the ocean like the end of Jumanji. Number 6, Kennedy assassination newspaper. I mean, I can understand why someone would keep this. It was a very important moment in history. America was rattled by this. The president was shot from a grassy knoll. But let's go full conspiracy theory. What if the previous owners were the shooters? And they kept the clipping as a trophy, leaving it behind as a clue for some curious investigator to follow the trail. Probably not, but it would be super creepy to walk up in your attic and see a snapshot from one of the most horrific moments ever broadcasted. I would probably try to sell it on eBay. Number 5, Adolf Hitler's record collection. So this isn't much of a message as it is music, but I think we could all argue that there's some messages in songs. One of the most surprising things about this record collection is it contained Russian and Jewish musicians, which apparently Hitler considered subhuman. A strong rule should be if you're racist, you don't get to enjoy other people's culture. You stay in the corner while the rest of us eat pho and listen to K-pop. What really scares me about this isn't the music, but what he was doing while he played it. What occupied his hands right after he put the needle down on the record? Number 4. If you have a weak stomach, do not enter. This message was found in a Norwegian home by Reddit user MyNdig. How did they find it? Well, the story goes that they went up to their attic and found a door with a padlock on it. Neither of them had the key, so they got some bolt cutters to stamp it off. In the space, they found a lamp alarm, a map of Western Europe, a lonely doll shoe, and a note that said in Norwegian, if you have a weak stomach, do not enter. A super creepy room. Why would someone have something like this with a disturbing note? It turns out it was a World War II safe room. Could have potentially been used by Norwegian people to hide from Nazis and listen to BBC radio reports that weren't Nazi propaganda. The room was large enough to fit a whole family in it. Could you imagine how terrified you would be hiding from Nazis with your whole family? Number 3, a father's secret. This one we snagged off of the creepy subreddit, and it's a pretty wild story. Think back to when you were a teenager. You're at home, you're probably a little bored, so you start snooping around your house. You end up in the attic, and you find a chest full of letters. Seems pretty interesting, so you start flipping through them. And then you recognize the handwriting. It's your grandmother's, and all the letters are referencing being in jail, and all the letters are addressed to someone with the same name as your dad. This is exactly what happened to this Redditor. After making the frightening discovery, he took the evidence downstairs to his mom and asked her all about it. She took some prying, but then she confessed that his father had been imprisoned for murder. You think you know a guy, and then he's a murderer. After that, you would win all those arguments though. They're like, my dad could beat up your dad. Like, no, my dad could beat up your dad for sure. Number 2.
My job is to see the future. The Continental.
We're trying to put together our mission. It's definitely crazy.
Creepy piggy bank. Kids are always doing the silliest things, like coloring on walls, talking to imaginary friends, decapitating their toys. I actually did this when I was a kid. I pulled the head off my Max Steel action figure and then I cried when I couldn't get it back on. I'm not sure if this kid felt the same remorse. This is off the website Boredom Therapy, and this image is haunting. It seems like some little girl got creative with her arts and crafts and glued the severed head of one of her dolls to the top of this jar. She then labeled the jar with what I assume is the doll's name, Holly. Either that, or a message to some girl named Holly that she's gonna cut off her head and stuff her body full of coins. This is super creepy. It's basically the villain from the original Toy Story if he was more financially responsible. Number 1, Blanche Monnier. Now this last one wasn't exactly a message found in an attic, but an anonymous letter led people straight to an attic. Blanche Monnier is a very unsettling case. The year is 1901 in France. Police receive an anonymous tip that someone is being held captive. When they went to investigate, they found Blanche Monnier. The now 52-year-old woman had been locked in her attic by her mother for 25 years. Blanche was almost a skeleton. She was malnourished. She hadn't seen sunlight the entire time she was held captive. Her mother was arrested and Blanche was transferred to a hospital. The saddest part about this is I feel no justice was served because Blanche's mother died 15 days after her arrest, and there was no time for a trial to be held.
Starting us off, in at number 10, we have a terrible friend. Back in 1941, Theodore Coney landed himself in some financial troubles, so he went to visit an old friend that he hasn't seen in a while. But once he got to the house, it was unlocked, and he realized that no one was home. Apparently he doesn't have any manners because he just decided to let himself in. As we were exploring the house, he came across a small door that led to a tiny room in the attic. He decided to live in there because it was much better than living on the streets in the wintertime. Well, keep in mind that this guy never asked his friend for permission. He would sneak out of his hiding place whenever his friend left the house, and he would shower, cook himself meals and watch TV. But one day his friend caught him in the act, and out of panic, Coney shot his friend to death. But instead of fleeing the crime scene and getting the heck out of there, he went right back to his little room. Eventually the police found him hiding in the attic, and he was arrested for the murder. The worst neighbor takes us to number 9. Over in China, a man started to notice that a lot of his food and personal items started to go missing without any explanation. He lived alone and he was always diligent about locking his door. But when he tried to get into his unit, he was locked out of his apartment, so he decided to call the police. When they searched the apartments, they found a hole in the kitchen ceiling that actually led up to the attic of a 3-story apartment building. Inside of the attic, they found a homeless person who has been sneaking into people's apartments, and he would do this to try to steal money and cook for himself. In total, this guy actually managed to steal $320, but I bet he was able to feed himself delicious meals for a very long time. The stranger who claimed she got permission to live in his attic brings us to number 8. A man named Davis Wallman had no idea what he would uncover when he went to his attic one day. He went up there to investigate a bunch of weird noises, but to his surprise, the door to his own attic was locked. So sadly enough, he decided to knock on the door, but to his surprise, someone actually answered it.
Who the heck are you? Why are you in my house? And she keeps kind of going, this is my house. I live here. I've been here for 3 days. Jimmy said I could live here. Jimmy said I could stay here.
The homeowner quickly called the police, but the strange house guest managed to pack up her stuff and escape before the police were able to come in. How did she think that this was her house? Didn't she see all the pictures on the wall didn't belong to her? I mean, what a weird woman. Creeping into number 7, we have a crazy ex-boyfriend. Back in December of 2010, a woman was getting pretty worried because strange things started happening in her house, and she was almost positive that her crazy ex-boyfriend was the one responsible. Well, one night she went to plug in her phone, but when she went to get it, her phone was gone. She managed to call the police using a landline, and the police arrived at her house, and they were able to find someone in the attic. They found her ex-boyfriend hiding underneath some old insulation. He was living there for a long time, spying on his ex-girlfriend. He took her cell phone to check if she was talking to other guys, and he watched her daily. He was arrested, and as it turns out, this wasn't the first time that he broke into an ex-girlfriend's house without their permission. Is this real life right now? I mean, wow, can this guy not just take a hint? I mean, move on. Download Tinder, maybe you'll meet someone new. But oh wait, you're in prison now, so good luck with that. Unless you can like swipe prison inmates or something. I don't know how the Tinder for prisoners. A food thief is caught in at number 6. I think the only thing worse than having a stranger secretly living in your attic would be if they were also stealing your food. I mean, I hate to go grocery shopping, and if someone stole my food, it means I just have to go grocery shopping more often. I would be pretty upset. I mean, you're already getting free rent. The least you can do is go to the corner store and buy your own damn food. Well, for a man living in Manhattan, he was getting pretty agitated when his food started to mysteriously disappear. I mean, living in Manhattan can't be cheap. So when your expensive food starts to go missing, I'd be pretty upset as well. Which I'm gonna say was a pretty bad idea. Nothing good can ever come from accusing your girlfriend of eating your food. But anyways, I guess he didn't believe her because he set up night vision cameras around his kitchen, and to his surprise, he saw a woman climbing down from the attic and started to make herself a midnight snack.
This game, you're not ready for it.
You're in the middle of this beautiful sci-fi environment, and you're seeing intrigue, the espionage, the alliances form, the power that just shifts around, and it's amazing to watch.
Simple actions can have massive effects.
You can cooperate with people, compete with them, make friendships, deceive them, betray them.
It's amazing to think that it's all just other players.
More players start coming. It just starts this complete cascade of actions, and you don't know what's going to happen.
It is a free-for-all. We'll get locked up and shot instantly. People start dying left, right, and centre. It's just something that you can't get anywhere else. It's just the rush like no other.
All good. Everybody's on this journey and writing their own stories, and that is probably the simplest way I can describe Eve.
It's unclear how she managed to get inside, but apparently she's been living there for more than 2 weeks. The opposite of Santa Claus comes in at number 5. A family from Pennsylvania noticed that some of their Christmas presents started to go missing on Christmas Eve. They also heard strange noises coming from the attic, and they really believed that someone had broken into their house. They decided to call the police, but they couldn't find anything. On the following day, the family found footprints in the closet of one of the bedrooms that led to the attic. They called the police again. By this time, they brought a dog with them. That's when they found a man living in the attic. Apparently, he used to be a tenant that lived in the other part of the duplex, but he was kicked out, but I guess he moved back in. So instead of leaving and moving on with his life, he moved his things upstairs. Well, he was convicted and sentenced to 23 months in jail, but at least now he is getting rent-free and free food, right? Number 4 takes us to a man who lived in a family's attic, and he snuck into a 14-year-old girl's room at night. I mean, this sounds like every parent's worst nightmare coming true. A man from Tennessee was secretly living in a family's attic, and he would visit their 14-year-old daughter at night. It's just so creepy. Apparently the two of them planned on running away together, but in the meantime, they thought it would be best if he just squatted in the attic while she went to high school. Well, one night the mother was shocked when she saw the man standing at the top of the stairs looking down at her. He quickly ran to the daughter's room and went up to his small home in the attic, but it was too late. The mother called the police and he was arrested for aggravated criminal trespassing. It sounds like this 14-year-old needs to be taught a lesson about picking boyfriends, because he definitely doesn't sound like a keeper. An unwanted house guest is up next at number 3. Do you ever wonder what really happens in your house when you're not there? Well, for one woman, she found out the hard way when she called in sick to work and she was home all day with a stranger who was watching her every move. The day went by without anything out of the ordinary, but around 7 p.m., when she went in for a bath, she looked up towards the ceiling and saw that the crawl space to the attic was open, and she saw that someone had been watching her from the attic. Apparently this creeper has been living in her house for the past 6 months. I don't want to terrify you, but if you ever feel like someone is watching you, chances are you're probably right. A new homeowner breaks into our list at number 2. I've heard of squatters and we've seen people living in strangers' attic, but this next story takes the cake. When a man returned home from vacation, he would never thought that he would come home and find strangers have taken over his entire house. When he got home, he saw a strange dog in his backyard, and then out of nowhere, he heard a baby crying inside of his house. He doesn't have a baby. As he went from room to room, he noticed that things had been moved around. He heard people in the house, so he went outside and immediately called 911. When they knocked on the door, a strange woman answered. She was wearing his wife's clothes and acted like she owned the place. The uninvited house guest was later arrested and charged with burglary, neglect of a child, and petty larceny. And guess what? This isn't the first time that something like this has ever happened. Apparently the police get a ton of phone calls about people returning from vacation only to find out that strangers are now living in their house. The ex-boyfriend who just won't quit comes in at number 1. A single mother of 5 lived in a house over in South Carolina. By the end of 2012, she started to notice weird noise coming from her attic and nails were popping out of the ceiling. She went to the attic to investigate, but she wasn't able to find anything, out of the ordinary. She still had a pit in the bottom of her stomach, and she just knew that something wasn't right. As the days went on, the plaster on the ceiling started to fall off, and she kept hearing some strange noises coming from the attic. She took her nephew and she went to look in the attic again. This time she saw her crazy ex-boyfriend hiding in the corner, and it looked like he'd been living up there for like almost a month. He obviously fled the scene and police weren't able to track him down. So if you guys are living in South Carolina right now, you might want to check up on your attic, make sure that this guy isn't sleeping there at nighttime.
YouTube is the #1 site for millions of creators online, but as more people flood to the platform, it's getting harder for your content to stand out from the crowd. That's where Sprizzy can help. Meet Tim, the lead singer of his band. Tim dreams of touring the globe and playing for fans all around the world. On top of putting out great content, he uses Sprizzy to reach new music lovers every day. Tim started by providing the names of a few bands whose audiences might also dig his own stuff. And Sprizzy set to work, promoting his content to those potential new listeners. Unlike other promotional tools, Sprizzy gives you control over your target audience. We believe in reaching real users, building your following, and encouraging organic growth. With more eyes on your content, you might just go viral. Take Emma, a fashion influencer. Like Tim, she used Sprizzy to highlight her videos to followers of larger fashion channels. And now she's on her way to her next subscriber milestone. Ready to grow your channel? Visit Sprizzy.com and start your campaign now.
This is not just delivery. This is knowing even superheroes can use a sidekick. Walgreens.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the headless ghost miner. According to the legend, deep in the remote wilderness of Yukon, there once was a thriving mining town. In the late 1800s, tragedy struck when a miner lost his head in a horrific accident deep within the mine shaft. The incident left the town in shock, and the legend of the headless ghost miner was born. Locals claim to this day the spirit of the miner roams the abandoned mining town, searching for his lost head. Witnesses report encountering a spectral figure dressed in tattered mining gear, carrying a flickering lantern. Despite the absence of a head, the ghostly miner emits blood-curdling screams that echo through the night. Those who have crossed paths with the headless ghost miner speak of an overwhelming sense of dread and an intense feeling of being watched. Some claim to have witnessed the miner's lantern light flicker and heard his disembodied voice calling out for help. The legend has been passed down through generations, warning people to stay away from the haunted mining town after dark. Whether the legend is rooted in real tragedy or fueled by the imagination of storytellers, the tale of the headless ghost miner continues to send shivers down the spines of those who venture into the desolate reaches of Yukon's wilderness. In our number 9 spot today, we have the ghost train of Stony Trail. Located on the outskirts of Calgary in Alberta, Stony Trail is a popular highway that encircles the city. According to the legend, late at night, a ghostly train can be seen and heard traveling alongside the highway, even though there are no train tracks in the vicinity. Witnesses claim that the apparition of an old-fashioned train, complete with smoke billowing from its stack and the sound of its whistle, appears out of nowhere and follows the path of Stony Trail for a short distance before vanishing into thin air. Some even report feeling a chill in the air and a sense of unease when encountering the ghost train. There are various theories surrounding the origins of this paranormal phenomenon. One popular belief is that the ghostly train is a residual haunting, a recording of past events imprinting on the surrounding environment. According to local lore, a train derailed in the area decades ago, resulting in multiple fatalities. It is said that the spirits of the deceased continue to haunt the land, manifesting as the ghost train. Whether the sightings are the result of overactive imaginations, optical illusions, or actual paranormal activity, the legend of the ghost train of Stony Trail continues to intrigue and captivate those who travel along the highway late at night, reminding them that the boundary between the living and the supernatural may not be as distinct as it seems. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Gray Man. According to the legend, the Gray Man is a spectral figure that haunts the vast prairies and desolate stretches of land in Saskatchewan. The Gray Man is described as a tall and shadowy figure wearing a long, tattered coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscures his face. He is often seen wandering aimlessly in remote areas, appearing and disappearing mysteriously. The legend suggests that encountering the Gray Man brings a profound sense of unease and foreboding to those who witness him. Locals and travelers claim to have seen the Gray Man in various locations across the province, particularly in isolated rural areas and near abandoned homesteads. Witnesses describe feeling an overwhelming sense of being watched or followed, and some have even reported hearing disembodied whispers or the sound of footsteps when there is no one around. The origins of the Gray Man legend are shrouded in mystery. Some speculate that he may be the ghost of a lost soul or a restless spirit bound to the land. Others believe that he serves as a warning or harbinger of impending doom. The legend of the Gray Man adds a very eerie and supernatural element to Saskatchewan's expansive and secluded landscapes. It continues to intrigue and unsettle those who venture into the remote corners of the province, perpetuating the fascination with the unknown and the paranormal.
Hi guys, I'm Don Gaming, and today I want to talk about one of the hottest strategy PC games you can play today, State of Survival. SOS has received recognition from GameSpot, IGN, and Collider, and has been downloaded over 170 million times worldwide. It has also collaborated with top IPs like The Walking Dead, The Joker, and the UFC. This zombie apocalypse game offers an immersive gaming experience, compelling plot, and amazing graphics. To survive the apocalypse, you need to think strategically alongside your allies. Join my alliance, Don Gaming, and let's level up together. Don't miss out on the exclusive gifts. Download now and use the code PLAYSOS on PC.
State of Survival. Play now.
In Saskatchewan folklore. Whether the Gray Man is a figment of imagination or a genuine spectral entity, his legend continues to captivate the imagination of locals and visitors alike. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a creature you may have heard of before, and they are a creature deeply rooted in Indigenous folklore and is said to roam the wilderness of Manitoba. According to legend, the Wendigo is a malevolent spirit or entity that takes the form of a gaunt and emaciated creature. It is often depicted as towering in stature with sunken eyes, long limbs, and antler-like protrusions from its head. The Wendigo is said to be driven by insatiable hunger and an unquenchable desire for human flesh. The legend warns that those who venture into the remote forests of Manitoba may encounter the Wendigo. It is believed that the creature possesses humans, driving them to madness and human consumption. The Wendigo is said to embody the darkest aspects of human greed and gluttony, and the origins of the Wendigo legend are deeply rooted in the folklore of the Indigenous peoples of the region, particularly the Algonquin tribes. The story serves as a cautionary tale warning against the dangers of selfishness and the consequences of succumbing to one's primal desires. The legend of the Wendigo continues to captivate the imagination and instill fear in those who venture into the wilderness of Manitoba. In our number 6 spot today, we have the ghostly hitchhiker of Blue Ghost Tunnel. Located in Thorold near Welland Canal here in Ontario, the Blue Ghost Tunnel is an abandoned railway tunnel with a reputation for being haunted. As the legend goes, the ghostly hitchhiker is said to be a young woman who tragically lost her life in the tunnel many years ago. According to the stories, the ghostly hitchhiker is often seen standing near the entrance of the tunnel, dressed in outdated clothing. She appears as a spectral figure, pale and ethereal, emitting an eerie blue glow, hence the name Blue Ghost Tunnel. Legend has it that the ghostly hitchhiker is known to wander the nearby roads, seemingly seeking a ride. Those who have encountered her claim that she vanishes without a trace once they approach or attempt to interact with her. The Blue Ghost Tunnel itself adds to the mystique surrounding this legend. It has a dark and eerie atmosphere with reports of strange sounds, apparitions, and an overall feeling of unease among those who venture inside. The legend has captivated the imaginations of locals and paranormal enthusiasts, drawing visitors to the tunnel in search of ghostly encounters and supernatural experiences. Whether it's a tale born from tragedy, folklore, or simply a product of people's vivid imaginations, the legend of the ghostly hitchhiker of Blue Ghost Tunnel adds an air of mystery and spookiness to Ontario's urban legends. In our number 5 spot today, we have the ghost ship of Northumberland Strait. According to legend, residents of Nova Scotia's Northumberland Strait have reported sightings of a mysterious phantom ship sailing the waters under the cover of night. The ship is said to be a spectral vessel glowing with an otherworldly light and surrounded by an eerie aura. The sightings often describe the ship as an old, weathered vessel with tattered sails billowing in the wind. Witnesses claim that the ship appears and disappears without a trace, leaving no sign of its presence or destination. The ghost ship of Northumberland Strait is believed to be a vessel lost at sea, doomed to wander the waters for eternity. Some versions of the legend suggest that the ship carries the restless spirits of sailors who perished in a tragic maritime accident. Local fishermen and sailors have shared chilling accounts of encountering the ghost ship, describing a bone-chilling silence and a very unsettling feeling of being watched as the phantom vessel passes by. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Ghost Bride of St. John. Legend has it that in the late 19th century, a young bride was preparing for her wedding day in St. John, New Brunswick. Tragically, on the day of her wedding, the bride's groom-to-be perished in a shipwreck off the treacherous Bay of Fundy. Heartbroken and devastated, the bride decided to take her own life by jumping off of a cliff into the turbulent waters below. Since then, locals claim to have witnessed this ghostly apparition of a veiled bride wandering near the cliffs overlooking the bay. She is said to appear in a flowing white wedding gown, her face hidden by a very sheer veil. Some have reported hearing her mournful cries or the faint sound of wedding bells carried by the wind. According to the legend, the ghost bride is forever trapped in a state of sorrow and longing, doomed to wander the cliffs in search of her lost love. Some believe that encountering the ghost bride is an omen of misfortune and impending tragedy. The story of the Ghost Bride of St. John's has become an enduring part of New Brunswick's folklore, captivating locals and visitors alike. In our number 3 spot today, we have Ogopogo. The legend of Ogopogo is one of the most famous urban legends in British Columbia, Canada, particularly centered around the Okanagan Lake in the interior of the province. Ogopogo is believed to be a serpentine lake monster resembling a giant sea serpent or a prehistoric creature that inhabits the depths of the lake. According to indigenous legends, the Silks people have long revered Ogopogo as a powerful water spirit or guardian of the lake. The name Ogopogo is derived from the Salish word meaning water demon. It is said to have a long body, dark greenish-brown scales, and a serpentine head, often described as resembling a cross between a snake and a dinosaur. Over the years, numerous eyewitness accounts and alleged sightings have added to the lore surrounding Ogopogo. Witnesses claim to have seen humps, a snake-like creature, or large disturbances in the water suggestive of a large unknown creature swimming beneath the surface. Some accounts even describe Ogopogo emerging partially from the water, resembling a massive serpent. The legend of Ogopogo has attracted enthusiasts, researchers, and skeptics alike. Various expeditions, sonar scans, and photographic investigations have been conducted in an attempt to capture evidence of the creature's existence. The legend continues to thrive through books, artwork, festivals, and the ongoing fascination with this mysterious lake monster. Whether Ogopogo is a mythical creature, a misidentification of known animals, or an actual remnant from a bygone era, the legend persists, adding a touch of mystery and wonder to the beautiful Okanagan region and its majestic lake. In our number 2 spot today, we have the haunting of Beaconsfield Historic House. Beaconsfield Historic House, located in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, is a Victorian mansion with a rich history. According to local tales, the house is haunted by the spirit of a former resident, a young woman named Lucy Maud Montgomery. Montgomery, renowned as the author of the famous novel Anne of Green Gables, is said to have had a deep connection with the house during her time there. Visitors and staff have reported strange occurrences within the house, including unexplained footsteps, doors opening and closing on their own, and the sound of disembodied laughter echoing through the halls. Some have even claimed to catch glimpses of a ghostly figure resembling Montgomery herself. Many believe that Montgomery's lingering spirit continues to reside within Beaconsfield House, perhaps drawn by the memories and inspiration it holds. The ghostly tales surrounding this historic house have captivated locals and visitors alike, adding an eerie charm to its already compelling history. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Devil's Footprints. The story goes that one winter's night, a small coastal community in Newfoundland and Labrador woke up to find a peculiar set of footprints in the freshly fallen snow. The footprints were incredibly large and hoof-like in shape, leaving the villagers perplexed and fearful. The tracks stretched across rooftops, gardens, and even crossed over bodies of water, defying the laws of nature. Terrified, the townspeople believed that the tracks were the work of the devil himself. They believed that the devil had come to their village to wreak havoc.
Twisted Tea is a refreshing hard iced tea made with real brewed tea. Keep it twisted.
and spread fear among them. Some claimed to have heard eerie laughter in the distance or witnessed strange lights in the sky accompanying the appearance of the footprints. As word spread, similar sightings of the devil's footprints were reported in neighboring communities, intensifying the fear and intrigue surrounding the legend. Many attempted to follow the tracks, but they always seemed to vanish mysteriously, leaving no trace behind. To this day, the legend of the devil's footprints remains a chilling mystery in the province. Some attribute the phenomenon to natural causes like unusual weather patterns or hoaxes, while others believe it to be the work of supernatural forces. Regardless of its origins, the legend continues to captivate the imaginations of locals and visitors alike, reminding them of the mysterious and otherworldly aspects of the region's folklore.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Alaska Triangle. Turns out that Alaska has its very own Bermuda Triangle. This is referred to as the area in the southeast to the northern borough region to the western metropolis of Anchorage. Apparently, more than 20,000 people have gone missing in this area. That's just in the past half century alone. And these people go missing without a trace. No one knows what happens to them or where they went. So some believe that this area is home to mythological type beasts that kidnap and then eat these people. Whereas others believe that this area is home to some dark vortex that sucks these poor souls in. Regardless of what you believe in, one thing is for sure, this triangle has and continues to take the lives of many. In our 9th spot, we have the UFO base. And if you guys are still watching, hopefully smash that like button. Let me know in the comments below that you're still here. Hi. It is believed that Alaska is home to a top secret UFO base, even though it's not that top secret if people claim that there is one. Anyways, Mount Hayes is the highest mountain in the eastern Alaskan range. That's the place where people believe extraterrestrials and UFOs are located. It all started in the 1940s when a number of UFOs were spotted in that area. Eventually, the sightings got more and more frequent that the FBI was called in to investigate the area. And the sightings haven't stopped. There have been hundreds of sightings throughout the years. In fact, Pat Price, a former CIA remote viewer, even said that the mountain, and I quote, housed one of the aliens' largest bases. So this urban legend might not be so much of a legend. In our 8th spot, we have the Captain Cook. This is a cute little hotel located in downtown Anchorage. According to legends though, this hotel is extremely haunted. Apparently a woman took her life in the hotel in the 70s, and her ghost can be seen wandering the halls. In particular, she is said to haunt the woman's restroom there. Visitors also claim that doors will open and close on their own and the lights will flicker on and off by themselves. According to locals, this woman is bound to the hotel and doesn't know how to escape it. So she's just stuck there, aimlessly wandering the halls for eternity. I don't know why she would haunt the bathroom though. Like, that's not a place I would hang around in if I was a ghost. Moving on at number 7, we have callout. A callout is said to be an evil earth spirit that appears in the form of a black dog that's completely hairless, but it does have hair on its little feet. But only its feet. Apparently this dog then stalks travelers at night and has been known to attack and kill them. Those that have apparently seen this spirit say they saw dog tracks in the snow that then disappeared right in front of their own eye. That's apparently a sign that the callout is nearby. In Inuit legend, the callout is said to be a spirit of death. Others believe that it's a real-life cryptid. Scariest part? Apparently, just by looking at this creature, they can cause victims to become disoriented and spiral into madness. They then will become lost and perish from hypothermia. The callout waits until this moment and then attacks and eats its victim. In our 6th spot, we have Mother Lode Lodge. Located in Palmer, this lodge is said to be very haunted. In fact, it literally has been known to spook even the hardest of souls. According to local legend, this hotel is haunted by a number of different spirits. Most famously, there's this black apparition ghost, given that name because it always appears as a black cloudy apparition. People have seen this spirit wandering the grounds. Another ghost is a figure that's dressed in black. This figure likes to show itself in mirror reflections. Just sounds like Bloody Mary to me. No thank you. On top of that, people have reported hearing strange noises in the middle of the night and have seen curtains open and close by itself. It's a good place to go ghost hunting, but a bad place to spend the night. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the aliens. In late fall through winter to early spring, the northern lights can be seen on nights with clear skies. I've always wanted to see the northern lights, like they're quite beautiful. But according to a weird urban legend, it states that the northern lights are produced by aliens. Yeah, you heard me. Legend goes that aliens create these beautiful lights so that they can then fly through the air undetected. In fact, cosmonaut Ivan Wagner was filming the northern lights when he captured a UFO flying by. Plus, there's already a ton of UFO and alien sightings in Alaska. So, could it be that this legend is true? That the aliens are behind this colorful display of lights? Moving on to number 4, we have the sea monster. Located in the waters near Kodiak Island lurks a close relative to the Loch Ness Monster. It has since been given the name the Kodiak Sea Monster. It all started in 1971 when a group of fishermen set sail. That's when they encountered this massive sea beast. One of the fishermen said, and I quote, "We don't know what it was, but it had a grayish color and we couldn't see any fins or any tail, and it never made any noise. It would just come up and you could see the head and part of the body." Another man described it as being 30 feet long and had a head on it that looked kind of like a horse. Then in 2002, it was seen again, this time by a different group of fishermen. They described it as having a massive head and neck. They couldn't tell if the head was a foot in diameter or 3 feet in diameter. To this day, the beast has never been caught, so maybe it's still out there, continuing to scare local fishermen. In our 3rd spot, we have the Alaskan Vortex. So let's talk more about this Alaskan triangle. The missing persons rate in that area is more than twice the national average. It's insane. As I mentioned briefly, some people believe that a vortex is to blame for all the disappearances. Legend goes that the vortex basically sucks people in and then transports them to different dimensions. Let's look at some of the facts used to support this theory. For starters, apparently the area has a huge number of magnetic anomalies. It throws off compasses and has even made people feel sick. A number of rescue workers that have gone into the area have claimed to feel disoriented, lightheaded, and have experienced auditory hallucinations. This could be evidence that a vortex is present. Moving on to number 2, we have the Bigfoot. Alaska apparently has its own Bigfoot. They call it the hairy beast, and apparently it lives in Port Chatham. It all started back in the 1930s when a number of people went missing in this area. In 1931, a man named Andrew Kamluck went out logging. He was later found dead in the forest with a bad blow to his head. Around the same time, another man was out in the area and randomly disappeared without a trace. And then another man named Tom Larson was out chopping wood when he saw this hairy beast on the beach. The creature was just standing there staring at him. It didn't attack him though. There are more stories that involve people mysteriously disappearing or dying in the area, and they blame it on this mysterious hairy beast. In fact, on a number of other occasions, people have seen like weird man-like beast footprints in the mud, which they believe is from this terrifying creature. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Kushtaka. Otters are cute little cuddly animals that are pretty innocent, right? Well, not in Alaska. You gotta be careful with the otters out there, because they might actually be shape-shifting creatures known as Kushtaka. The Kushtaka is said to be a cross between an otter and a man. In some stories, these creatures are said to be helpful, but in most stories, they are deceptive and evil creatures. They tend to mimic the screams of women and children so that fishermen will be like, "Oh my god, someone's out there, I need to help them, I'll save them," and then they go to help and they just get killed. They are also said to appear when people are vulnerable. Maybe there's a lost fisherman or hiker or someone that's injured. They'll come and be like, "We're here to help you, to rescue you." Instead, they'll lead you deeper into the wilderness and either tear you to pieces or turn you into a Kushtaka to prevent your soul from ever being able to reincarnate. Wow, that's terrifying. Plus, the fact that they can also shapeshift into an otter is really weird. Like, so maybe you're out on the water and you're like, "Oh, cute, look at that little otter," and then all of a sudden it's like psych, and then grabs you and pulls you into the water. At number 10, we have the green-clawed beast. Imagine you're out enjoying your afternoon, lounging on an inner tube, floating in the river, when all of a sudden you are attacked by a creature. because that is exactly what happened to a woman named Naomi Johnson. On August 21st of 1955, Miss Johnson was out enjoying a swim with her friend in Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana. While swimming, Miss Johnson said that she was suddenly grabbed and pulled underwater by a large, hairy claw hand. She struggled underwater until she was able to kick herself free. She resurfaced only to shortly be pulled under again by this creature. Thankfully, Miss Johnson managed to escape once again. When she reached land, she had multiple bruises and wounds on her leg, one of which was a green claw print shaped hand. Now, Miss Johnson never got a good look at the creature, but could sense how big and strong it was from the force it used on her. This encounter was reported to an Air Force colonel who took detailed notes and then told Miss Johnson and her friend to never mention it again. Very suspicious. What is this man hiding? Was it a creature of his own that escaped? No one knows. But what they do know is to never swim in that river again. In our 8th spot, we have Walhalla Road. Located in North Columbus, this road is supposedly one of the scariest roads in Ohio. Legend has it that around 1950, a doctor by the name of Mooney and his wife and kids used to live along the road. It is said that one night Mr. Mooney lost his mind and murdered his family along this road. Apparently, if you walk this road in the dead of night, then you will see the ghost of Dr. Mooney murdering his family. You will also be able to hear them screaming and hollering. Like, the name of the road is literally Walhalla, like holla, like get it? Just a weird coincidence. Also, if you walk this road at night, it is said that you can see an eerie blue light appearing from the attic of the Mooney's old mansion. Coming in at number 7, we have Loveland Castle. Although it may sound like a nice place to go for a honeymoon, don't be fooled. It's not. Well, maybe if you guys have a thing for ghosts. Not judging. Now, this castle was actually handmade by a man named Harry Andrews back in 1929. Harry was obsessed with medieval times and architecture and decided to build this towering castle in the middle of the Midwest. Andrew passed away in April of 1981 at the age of 91. Loveland Castle is now a museum spot for tourists to visit. It is said that people have seen a shadowy figure roam the halls that resembles Harry. Typically, this ghost makes an appearance when something in the castle is going to go wrong. This may be Harry's way of still looking after the castle after passing away. In fact, one time, sounds of slamming doors could be heard upstairs. Upon investigation, they noticed that the septic tank was about to overflow. They believe that the slamming doors was Harry's way to warn them about this. And lastly, there's also said to be another spirit roaming the castle. This spirit is referred to as the Viking entity. Now, people believe that this entity is attached to one of Harry's antique swords in the castle. This Viking can be seen in a long black cloak, carrying a sword at his chest. Moving on to number 6, we have Riders Inn. Now, if you ever need a place to stay in Ohio, don't worry, I got you covered with a list of haunted inns not to stay at. Now, on this list is a bed and breakfast known as Riders Inn. In this inn, you can enjoy their restaurant, comfy accommodations, and of course, 3 ghosts. The first ghost that people have claimed to see is of a man dressed in a Civil War uniform. Now, both the other 2 ghosts are Roxanne and Susanna, the second and third wives of the inn's founder, Joseph Ryder. Apparently, Roxanne is a friendly ghost, whereas Susanna causes trouble around the inn. Inn residents have stated that they have been let into the inn by a woman in a white nightgown when the doors should have been locked. This was either the ghost of Roxanne or Susanna. Now, may I mention that this inn is literally located on a street named Paynesville? Like, what are the odds? We are now at our halfway mark with number 5. The Witch's Ball. What's a scary legend without some witches? Myrtle Hill Cemetery in Medina County is known for getting quite the group of interested people. Among all the graves, there's one in particular that stands out, and that's because it's marked with a giant sphere. This story revolves around a woman that endured a lot of suffering throughout her life. As a result, she ended up murdering her family members. She would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids and their dog. Just kidding. But I love Scooby-Doo. Classic. But seriously, she would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for the town members who realized that her family just started to disappear. They believed that she was a witch and she was practicing her magic in the woods. As a result, she was stoned to death and buried under the giant sphere. Now, apparently she was buried standing up to make it hard for her to escape, and the spear was put on top as another precaution to make sure she never arose. However, it is said that her spirit has found a way to escape. In the wintertime, snow will not fall on the spear or the ground around it. On top of that, if you touch the spear, it will appear warm from the witch's energy, and in the summer, it will appear cold. People have also claimed that they have seen her figure in the woods, by the cemetery, or even seen an eye on the ball itself. Coming in at number 4, we have the Akron Civic Theater. Built in 1929 by Marcus Lowe, the Akron Civic Theater is a nice place to watch theatrical performances and even see ghosts. Although this theater is beautiful, it has a much darker past. Now, there is said to be 3 ghosts that haunt this theater. The first ghost is of a janitor named Fred. Fred apparently was the janitor for the theater and passed away one evening on his shift. Fred's ghost has been seen throughout the theater, and in fact, one person reported seeing him standing just outside the main entrance. It is also said that Fred becomes angry for anyone that dirties up the bathroom and will chase or attack them. No thanks. I'd rather hold it in if that's the case. The second ghost is of a man who is said to be a frequent theater goer or even of an actor that used to work there. He is said to lurk on the balcony and is fashionably dressed. And the last ghost is of a woman who died after jumping into the canal, which is below the theater. Her spirit is still said to roam the theater and is often heard crying. Let's move on to number 3 with the Headless Ghost. In October of 1889, a train conductor by the name of John Walsh was bringing the train along the Nickel Plate Railroad in Arcadia. While waiting for the signal that would allow him to continue traveling, he noticed that a section of the train cars had disconnected. While trying to reconnect them, the other missing section came barreling towards him, smashing his head between the 2 cars. In January of 1890, it is said that an engineer has seen John's ghost. Apparently, at night you can see John's headless ghost roaming the tracks looking for his, well, lost head. It is also said that he carries a lantern which he swings back and forth, and people have seen the eerie glow of his lantern at night. In our second spot, we have Helltown. What a nice sounding town to visit in Ohio. Helltown is located in an abandoned town of Newville in Ohio. Now, Helltown wasn't always the name given to this area. It was once known as Boston Mills, but it was bought out by the government, who forced the residents to leave the town. Legend states that the government closed down Boston Mills after a chemical accident that occurred there. As a result of this accident, citizens began to mutate. Some people have claimed to see these disfigured, mutated residents still lurking in the area. It is also said that murdered children roam the woods of Helltown. Apparently, while headed to school, a school bus filled with students ran out of gas. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere when they were killed by a patient from a mental asylum. It is said that the ghosts of these children still roam the woods and can be seen at night, along with hearing their screams. And in our number 1 spot, we have the West Branch Witch. Another witch-related legend. Surprise, surprise. In the West Branch State Park of Portage County, there have been many claims of people encountering a woman dressed in all black. The first appearance was reported in 1960 by a man named B.A. Evans. He recently purchased a piece of land and later discovered a small cemetery on it. This cemetery contains 7 gravestones surrounded by a 40-inch wall. The gravestones are apparently from a family named the Elliots. The headstone that gets the most attention is that of Clemenza. Clemenza was apparently killed by a group of townspeople after being accused of being a witch. As a result, she was pressed. Basically, a wooden board was placed on her, and then on top was piled with stones until her body was crushed by the weight. To this day, her grave is marked by a pile of stones that rests on top of it. It is said that she haunts the graveyard and the surrounding area. In fact, on her tombstone is a curse that says, "Remember youth as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so must you be. Prepare for death and follow me." If you read it out loud by her grave, she will apparently chase you away. Now, this legend continues, saying that one night a group of kids took stones from Clemenza's grave. Later on, they died on their way home in a car accident, but the one kid that didn't take the stone survived. So, any geologists out there, I recommend not taking any rocks from this site.
Moving on to number 9 now, we have Athens Insane Asylum. Now this building opened its doors in 1874, becoming one of Ohio's largest asylums for the mentally ill. In the beginning, things went well. It offered some of the best care to its patients. As the years went on, the owners realized that they could put some of the patients to work there, specifically on the nearby farm. The greedier they got, the more patients they took on. By the 1950s, it had become a dumping ground for anyone that a family couldn't afford or simply didn't want to look after. At 2,000 patients, it was now 3 times over its capacity, yet the number of staff remained unchanged. Patients were forcibly restrained for days at a time, left in crowded rooms meant for one person, and regularly beaten by staff. In 1993, the hospital finally closed its doors. The remaining buildings were left to Ohio University. In the years after, students would tell tales of strange figures standing in the empty wings in the former hospital. For me though, the creepy part is the report of a stain on the top floor of the building. They say it's of Margaret Skeeling, a patient who went missing in 1979. She was found 42 days later in an abandoned ward. Tests show that she died of heart failure, yet she was found naked next to her clothes folded neatly on the floor. To the horror of those who found her, the body had decomposed so badly that a stain had seeped into the actual concrete. It couldn't be scrubbed away, and they say to this day the stain can still be seen. Next up at number 8 now, we have the Melonheads. These humanoid creatures are said to be found in Lake County, Ohio. Now according to legend, the government ran a number of secret experiments on local children there. A man called Dr. Crow performed the experiments on children in an orphanage. The government hoped that they wouldn't cause as much of a stir that way, because nobody would care about the children. Not my words, theirs. Or potentially theirs. The results of the experiment were shocking. The children's hair began to fall out and their bodies mutated, increasing their head to a gigantic size as a result of injecting them with excess fluid. The children feared for their lives. They grouped together and overthrew the twisted doctor, murdering him one night in the orphanage. Then they set fire to the building and fled to the woods to become feral. In the years since, locals have reported seeing fully grown adults with huge heads darting through the trees. While this is already creepy by itself, they also say that the so-called Melonheads are now cannibals, feeding on any person that wanders too close to the woods. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Reformatory. This is an old prison built in 1896 and designed by Levi T. Schofield. He wanted the place to inspire the inmates to experience a spiritual renewal and give up their harmful lifestyle, repent their wrongdoing. In the end though, it gained a reputation for death, after more than 200 people died there over the years. These days, people say that the building is haunted by the spirits of the dead. One such person is Helen Glatke, the wife of the prison's one-time warden. She was accidentally shot in the lung when a gun fell off a shelf. Now legend says though that she actually killed herself, and the whole accident story was nothing more than a cover-up. Then there's the rumors of a prisoner setting himself on fire in his cell, an old woman roaming the grounds, and also the hole. The hole was said to be a confinement space in the basement of the prison, designed for 20 people at most. However, guards would cram it full of prisoners just to torture them. The pain and anguish suffered within the walls are said to still remain and be heard on cold, dark nights. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Franklin Castle. This Victorian era building is said to be the most haunted house in Ohio, bar none. It's a bold claim, but the story seems to back it up. It was built in the 1880s by a grocer turned banker called Hans Tiedemann. Despite being rich, his life was struck by a number of tragedies. In that house, his 50-year-old daughter died, so too did his mother and 3 other children who died in infancy. His wife became so overcome with grief that she became despondent. He attempted to distract her by turning the house into a sort of castle. He built elaborate tunnels, prominent gargoyles, and a sprawling network of rooms. He stopped though when his wife also passed away. He sold the property. It changed hands a number of times over the decades, and then in the 1960s, reports of hauntings in the house began to spread. There were strange electrical surges, the sound of babies crying, and a mysterious woman in black who roamed the hallways at night. In 1975, human bones were said to be found in a closet in the house. Now since then, there have been reports of an axe murderer there, a mass shooting of Nazis in the basement, and even the hanging of one of the original daughters of the family. People may dispute some of the stories, but some people who visit agree that a lasting presence can definitely be felt at old Franklin Castle. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Loveland Frogmen. This is a really weird one, guys, and I'm saying this as a guy who has done more
Wix is your platform to perform on. A complete portfolio solution means you can tell your unique story with confidence. From choosing a name and design that fits your vision, to bringing your projects to life. Custom themes and layouts. Fine-tunable details and tons of animation options. Deliver an immersive experience. Spend less time on admin with live chat, forms, a detailed contact database, and one go-to inbox for all your messages. All while a powerful SEO toolkit lays the groundwork to maximize your reach. The platform is built for evolution, from a community building blog to a streamlined booking solution, or profit-boosting e-com store. You can shape your online presence from start to scale. Go to Wix.com and start today.
Urban Legends videos than he's had hot dinners. Residents of the town of Loveland have been reporting since 1955 that amphibious men live along the river there. The first sighting occurred when a businessman claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and watched the creatures for about 3 minutes. He described them as being 3 to 4 feet tall, covered with leathery skin and having webbed hands and feet. While they had some human-like features, he said that they had distinctly frog-like heads. Just before the creatures left, one of them seemed to wave what the witness described as a wand above its head. Like an actual magical wand. Sparks apparently came out of it. The man left, but over the years, many have reported similar experiences, leaving many locals to see the frogman as just a strange part of reality. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Grassman. You can think of this one as Ohio's version of Bigfoot. It's said to have all the same characteristics, a tall bipedal hominid that skulks around Ohio's deep woods. The Grassman gets its name from apparently building small hut-like structures or nests made out of tall grass. The first sighting occurred in 1978 when some local kids ran into their grandparents' home screaming about a hairy monster they had just seen in the gravel pit outside. When the grandparents went outside to investigate, they saw it too. They said it was covered in dark matted hair, sitting in the pit and fiddling with some trash. They later estimated it to be about 300 pounds. The family fled, but it wasn't the last time that they or many other locals saw them. When people started investigating, they found records from the 1700s of Native Americans in the area who spoke of a race of bipedal ape men. They referred to them as the wild ones of the woods and would often leave food out for them in an effort to keep the peace. Next up at number 3 now, we have the Cincinnati Music Hall. This is a classical music performance hall in Cincinnati, completed in 1878. Before construction was even finished, it was said the location was a place where the dead render the lives of the living a burden to them. How intense does that sound? When a nearby canal was being made, authorities found over 100 human skeletons that had to be removed. They buried them in the ground on which this building now stands on. More remains were placed there in 1838 when a steamboat exploded and flung bodies all over the city. They were also buried in the ground below the music hall. If that wasn't enough to creep you out, it also stands atop of an old orphan asylum and an old Civil War hospital. All of this has resulted in locals claiming it's the most haunted place in town. One night watchman felt the presence of ghosts there. He said, "They never touch me, but I always know when they are around, by an icy chill, a thrill of electricity. They never annoy me now by mere knocking, for I have gotten so used to it. So used to it that sometimes when people have really knocked at the door, I didn't open, because I thought it was only the dead that kept knocking, knocking, knocking." Well, I'm glad he can be so calm with dead people knocking at the door at night. Most of us would just nope right out of there. I know I definitely would. Moving on to number 2 now, guys, we have Lake Hope Furnace. During the Industrial Revolution, this furnace was used to process iron ore gathered from the area's sandstone bedrock. After 20 years, the furnace is shut down, but some say creepy stories still remain. They say that in order to ensure the furnace continued operating at night, watchmen were employed to tend to the furnace fires. On one fateful night, a watchman was walking along the platform with his lantern when he slipped in the darkness and fell into the bubbling ore inside the furnace. He screamed out for help, but was consumed in seconds. Now, legend says that on stormy nights, a ghostly watchman returns to make his rounds. There have been dozens of reports of a dark figure carrying a lantern walking along the top of Lake Hope Furnace. Some even say the figure continues pacing back and forth across the furnace until lightning strikes nearby, causing him to disappear until the next stormy night. Next up at number 9 now, we have the Defiance werewolf. This is a very famous one. The people of Defiance in Ohio have claimed that for the past 45 years or so, they've been terrorized by a werewolf. It was first sighted in 1972. Over the summer, there were many sightings of a rampaging, hair-covered beast on 2 legs. It was said to have a muzzle and was always covered in rags. The local media went into a frenzy, and even the police opened up a case file on the sightings. There have been many sightings since then. Many of them were around a series of old railroad tracks in the town, usually late at night. One of the first sightings was by a Mr. Davis. Now he said, "I was connecting an air hose between 2 cars and was looking down. I saw these huge hairy feet. Then I looked up and he was standing there with that big stick over his shoulder. When I started to say something, he took off for the woods." His friend, Mr. Jones, was with him at the time. He said, "At first I thought the whole thing was a big joke. When I saw how hairy and woolly it was, that was enough for me." Next up at number 8 now, we have Brubaker Bridge. According to legend, in the 1930s there was a brutal 1-car accident on this bridge over Sam's Run Creek, Butler County. The bridge is in a very rural area and nobody actually discovered the crash victims until later that night when a local farmer passed by. The farmer went to get help and a total of 12 bodies were recovered. They were eventually identified and given proper burials. That wasn't the end of things though. Shortly after, the farmer who originally discovered the bodies claimed that while crossing the bridge one night after, his car suddenly cut out. He said that he heard 13 knocks on his car, then a hissing noise before suddenly the car just came back to life. Locals say that this is the spirit of the 13th victim whose body was never recovered. The spirit is still said to haunt those who pass over the bridge, hoping they will be the ones to finally find its body and give them a proper burial so that they may pass on peacefully. Next up at number 7 now, we have Stony Creek Cemetery. The story goes like this. In 1825, the local caretaker in Stony Creek Cemetery in Adams County made a discovery. At the bottom of a large tree was the body of a young man. It didn't take much to figure out the cause of death, as the man's head was completely missing. Although it's hard to beat that in terms of strangeness, there was one other thing. The crime scene was clean of any blood around this headless body. The police determined the murder must have taken place somewhere else before the perpetrator then dumped the body in the cemetery. Rumors began to spread that the head had not been cut off but rather ripped off by something extremely powerful. The case remained open and unsolved for many years before entering books of folklore. There are those that say that some nights a misty figure appears under a tree in the cemetery, the ghost of this unidentified man, unable to find peace until his murder is solved. Moving on to number 6 now, guys, we have Patterson Tower. There are a number of theories about the origin of this strange tower, thought to be built by a John D. Patterson many years ago. According to legend, a group of teenagers in the 1960s took refuge in the tower during a thunderstorm. As the storm raged on, a lightning bolt hit the top of the tower. Electricity surged down the metal stair rail and electrocuted 2 of the teenagers, killing them almost instantly. They say that in the weeks afterwards, you could still see their charred outlines on the tower wall. Officials blocked off the tower from dark tourists by placing metal plates across the door. Visitors still just ripped them off though to see what was inside. Legend now says that on stormy nights, the shadowy spirits of the teenagers who died can be seen in the tower. A bright bolt of lightning will illuminate their ghosts, making them glow as if they had just been hit by lightning. When the storm fades, so do they. Until the next time. Coming at number 5 now, we have Little Sugar Creek. The town of Bellbrook is sometimes referred to as Ohio's Sleepy Hollow because of all the ghostly legends that originated there. A man called James Buckley ran a sawmill there many years ago. He lived in a small cabin and grew his business to great heights, becoming the wealthiest man in the town. One night, his newfound wealth attracted some robbers. When authorities finally arrived to help him, they found Buckley's headless body outside. The murder was never solved. People say the cabin was was haunted then by his spirit. Those who ventured there say they've been confronted by a headless ghost, his arms outstretched as if begging for help. In time, the sawmill was demolished, but that didn't bring an end to the sightings. Locals still say that if you wander down to Little Sugar Creek, where the sawmill once stood, you can still see the ghost of James Buckley, unable to pass on peacefully while the case of his brutal murder has been left cold. Moving on to number 4 now, we have Otterbein Cemetery. This one is also known as Bloody Horseshoe Grave. During the 1840s, an Ohioan called James Henry was involved with 2 women at the same time, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He wanted to know which one to marry. One night while riding home, he fell asleep on his horse. He awoke to find his horse had not taken him home, but had instead stopped in front of Mary Angle's house. He took this as a sign, and soon he and Mary were married. As his wedding gift to her, he gave her the horse that brought them together. They lived happily, but in 1845, Mary died from one of the many prevalent diseases at the time. She was buried in Otterbein Cemetery. Henry began courting Rachel Hodge, and eventually the two were married. He gave her the same horse as a wedding gift. They hadn't been married long before locals noticed something strange about Mary's tombstone. There was a glowing outline of a horseshoe on it. James took this as a sign that Mary was displeased with his new marriage. They said he was cursed. One night, witnesses heard strange noises and lights coming from the cemetery. The next morning, James was found dead in his barn with a mark of a horseshoe on his forehead. His death was ruled an accident, as Henry had been alone in the barn at the time. All alone except for one other creature, a horse. Even today, they say a strange horseshoe mark is still visible on Mary's tombstone, and that on some nights you can hear the sound of hooves trotting up the cemetery road. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Buxton Inn. This place has been going since 1812, making it one of the oldest inns in Ohio. In the mid-1800s, Major Buxton, after whom the inn was named, took control of the inn. There have been reports of ghosts there ever since. Many of the ghosts alleged to haunt the inn are said to be of previous owners. However, there's also strange knockings people have heard coming from the basement where the stagecoach drivers would have stayed. The door to that same basement is known to open and close by itself, and there have even been reports of footsteps coming up and down the stairs there. Major Buxton's spirit is said to be a shadowy figure, often sighted in the dining room. Another owner, Orrin Granger, appears as an elderly woman wearing old-fashioned breeches who is said to steal pies from the kitchen. There's also the lady in blue, who died in the inn and is recognizable by her distinct perfume. There's even a phantom cat that enters people's rooms at night in much the same way it did when it was alive. Next up at number 2 now, we have Old Raritan. The story goes that as European settlers first began to arrive in the Ohio Valley, wolf attacks on livestock became more and more frequent. Farmers began to hunt down the wolves, possibly to the point of extinction, but none of them could have predicted what came next. One wolf in particular always managed to escape the farmers. A huge grey one became known as Old Raritan. Farmers often reported seeing him and his mate wandering through the woods, but they never could corner him. Eventually, they became the only wolves that remained. One night, the wolves were trapped with their backs against Big Rock, a famous landmark. The hunters opened fire and brought the female down. Just as the hunters set their dogs loose to finish her off, a loud cry echoed through the woods. Old Raritan leapt in front and fought the dogs off. The hunters opened fire and wounded him too. Eventually, they called off their dogs. Old Raritan dragged his now dead mate up to the top.
Whoa, Steve, what's up?
Hey, man. You know, ever since we bought our used truck at Car Bravo, I'm really feeling the used-phoria.
Used-phoria?
Yeah, it's the feeling you get when you buy a used car backed with certified service techs and a nationwide network of service centers.
Is that what all this is about?
Yeah.
It's working.
Yeah.
Car Bravo. Feel the used-phoria.
Of Big Rock. Once there, he let out a thunderous howl across the backdrop of the moon and then slumped down beside his mate. All was quiet, but not forever. On certain nights, locals say you can still hear a painful howl, and that if you head to the top of Big Rock, you'll be faced with the ghost of Old Raritan, still ready to fight in his afterlife. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Bloody Bridge. Sometimes you can just tell from these titles where these stories are heading. This bridge lies just outside of Spencerville, crossing the Miami-Erie Canal. According to legend, the bridge was the site of a grisly murder in 1854. In the years before that, a rivalry grew between two local men, Bill Jones and Jack Billings. Both had fallen for a woman called Minnie Warren. In the end, Minnie chose Jack, sending Bill into a fit of rage. One night in 1854, Minnie and Jack began to cross the bridge on their way home from a party. At the other end, though, stood Bill. He was holding an axe. They didn't have time to run. Bill took one swing and severed Jack's head clean off. Minnie screamed and jumped off the bridge and into her watery grave. Bill then disappeared until his skeleton was found years later in a well. Was it or revenge from the couple's family? Either way, the years since then have seen reports of ghostly images of the murdered couple on the bridge. Some even say that when the water gets dark enough, you can look over the bridge and see Minnie Warren's face staring right back at you in horror.
Number 10. The Bisman Building. The Bisman Building was built in 1886, and fun fact, the film Shawshank Redemption used this place as a filming location. If you have seen the film, the building is used as the entrance to the Brewer Hotel, where Brooks and Red stayed after they were paroled from Shawshank. The real building, though, is haunted. While here many people experience a feeling of dread and sadness, particularly on the 3rd floor. Many people also report an overwhelming sensation of darkness when on this floor, so if I were you, I would just stay away from the 3rd floor in general. Disembodied footsteps, voices, being poked and pushed, black shadows, and dark figures caught in images seems to be something that happens a lot. Spirits of a young girl Ruthie, her aunt, and the spirit of a retired worker who died in an accident before leaving the building are 3 identified spirits that stay here. In past investigations here, investigators have received audible responses to their questions. Yep, the ghosts spoke to them. One piece of audio evidence was when an investigator asked if they could speak to Ruthie, and a voice was caught saying, "Is Ruthie here?" In addition to Ruthie, people have witnessed the spirit of a woman throughout the upper floors, people in Victorian clothing, and the sounds of people working. Number 9. Staley Road. Sometime in the early 1800s, pioneer John Wrench used the services of 3 Staley brothers to build a flour mill. The finished structure was to become the first double-wheeled mill in Ohio. The business flourished, and after several years, John had made enough money to retire and ended up selling his mill to Elias Staley. The mill was then passed down to his brother Andrew and continued to produce flour until 1905. Today, the mill is still standing, and on Staley Road, named for the brothers, winds its way past and through the woods. It has become something of a rite of passage for local teens to drive this road at night to show how brave they are. It's been said that Old Man Staley went on a rampage, ending the lives of many, and is now haunting the road. Motorists say that they often experience unexplained car trouble, and some have even seen Staley's ghost standing next to or even lying in the road. Number 8. The Golden Lamb. As the oldest hotel in Ohio, the Golden Lamb has seen more than its share of famous guests, including Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Daniel Webster, and 12 American presidents. Yeah. 12. It's fantastic, but there's also been death and tragedy in the hotel. Guests have cited a girl who may be Sarah Stubbs, the niece of the hotel manager in the 1800s, or possibly Eliza Clay, a girl who died of a high fever at the hotel in 1825. The ghost of Charles R. Sherman, an Ohio Supreme Court justice who died at the inn in 1929, is said to appear in the hallways as a gray, gaunt man and conjures the smell of cigar smoke. Charles's death left his wife and 11 children, including Civil War General William T. Sherman, penniless. As a result, most of his children were put up for adoption, and some say the guilt of his family's demise keeps his spirit at the inn. Number 7. Moonville Tunnel. Located deep in the woods, the tunnel is framed by a faded stone archway covered in moss. The tunnel itself is long and extremely dark. It's actually an out-of-work stretch of railroad track that leads to an old coal mining town. If you're brave enough to venture through it, you might see the ghost of Frank Lawhead, an unlucky train conductor who met his end in a head-on collision with another train. Visitors in the area have taken photos with cameras or phones, only to look back at them later and notice the pale figure of a man they didn't see before. 1974, or phantom train lights blazing at the end of the tunnel. It's also said if you listen carefully, inhale deeply, and blink intermittently, you may encounter spirits from another time. The piercing whistle of a train rounding a curve, the smell of lavender wafting from a woman in an old-fashioned dress, or even the glow of gaslit lantern illuminating the face of the weathered brakeman. So that's fun. Number 6, the Buxton Inn. The Buxton Inn was built by Orrin Granger in 1812 as an inn and tavern, and it also served as Granville's first post office and as a stagecoach stop. I'm just gonna say it, this place is haunted. The first ghost spotted in the Buxton Inn was the first owner, Orrin. Other ghosts include the Lady in Blue, rumored to be the former innkeeper Ethel Bonnie Bonnell, Major Buxton, whom the inn was named, and even a phantom cat seen slinking along the halls. There's been strange activity like footsteps and doors opening on their own reported in the inn's basement, where stagecoach drivers would often stay during their stopovers in the past. However, the ghosts just don't stay in the basement. Oh no. Rooms 7 and 9 are said to be the strongest places for activity, with apparitions appearing. One guest even reported a ghost cat showing up to cuddle and purr in the middle of the night, which, like, aw, that's so cute. Guests have reported strange phenomenon throughout the hotel though, like their names being called out and invisible footsteps. I would not want to sleep there. Number 5, woods surrounding London. Okay, again, not London, England, but London, Ohio. Deep inside these woods sits an old abandoned barn that is so rotted away it is practically melded back into the trees. It's rumored that ghosts like to spend some time here. If you ask anyone from the area, they'll tell you that these woods are haunted. According to legend, a family of 5 was traveling through the woods in the late 1890s when they were stopped and had their lives ended by a band of thieves. Those brave enough to wander through the woods of London at night have reported hearing gunshots and disembodied screaming. Others have felt a sudden drop in temperature before seeing a strange white mist hanging in the trees. Let me just say, it's a no for me. Number 4, Ridge's Asylum. Ridge's Asylum originally opened in 1874 and was known as the Athens Asylum for the Insane. It had 2 wings, one for female patients and one for the male patients. The most violent patients were housed at the outermost tip of each wing. By the start of the 1900s, the asylum had become dangerously overcrowded, and rumors of inhumane treatment at the hands of the overworked staff were growing. Despite this, it was not officially closed until 1993. Some parts of the building are still in use, while other areas are completely abandoned. One of the scariest places in the building.
Did we make a better bourbon when we lit a recipe on fire in 1953? Taste for yourself.
Is the outline of a body where Margaret Shrilling died in 1979. She apparently got lost in the disused part of the hospital in the winter of 1978-79 and was not found for more than a month. When the corpse was eventually removed, it left a stain that could never be washed away, which just makes me gag thinking about it, but imagine the smell, like, ew. Ugh. She is one of the many ghosts who is said to walk the asylum at night. Strange figures have been seen roaming around the old floors. Others have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and screaming. Most appealing to imagination is the basement. Some claim severely disabled patients were kept on chains in dungeon-like places. Some say they've even heard the chains being pulled. Oh, and there's also a cemetery on the grounds which holds over 1,930 bodies. Of those, 700 women and 959 men lay under the headstones marked with only a number, which is sad. Number 3. Bobby Mackey's. Built in 1850, Bobby Mackey's is said to be the most haunted nightclub in America. When it was first built, the building served as a slaughterhouse and meat packing facility. The standard for most slaughterhouses of its day, the facility featured a well to collect the runoff of animal blood, innards, and other waste. If that image wasn't icky enough, there have also been several deaths in and around the club throughout the years. The place harbors energy so dark that a portal to hell is rumored to swirl somewhere within its basement. There is strange, suffocating heat, a trash can once flew through the air, and the apparition of a man with a handlebar mustache appears in the mirror. I would not want to get anywhere near that place ever. Number 2. Licking County Jail. Originally opened in 1889, the Licking County Jail is now home to only prisoners serving afterlife sentences. It contains stacks of cramped, grimy cells lining its dimly lit halls. Since being put out of commission, the jail has become a notoriously haunted hotspot. While it was operating, a total of 3 sheriffs and 19 inmates died on the premise. If you make your way to Licking County Jail, it's said you should peer between the cell bars as figures of prisoners are said to peer back. Visitors have reported hearing cell doors slamming, being touched, whispering in your ear, whistles, the sound of footsteps, some of those being what seems residual, the jingling of keys, screams and moaning, as well as seeing strange light anomalies, full shadow figures, and photos with unexpected images in them. That sounds absolutely terrifying, and I would not want to go there. And coming in at number 1 is Sedamsville Rectory. The Sedamsville Rectory is a historical building that once served as the home for priests of Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. Priests of questionable moral character were rumored to live here, if you know what I mean, including a man who was moved around considerably before retiring from the priesthood, leaving some to believe the church was covering up his tendency of mistreating animals. His fellow priests later confessed to hearing strange sounds coming from his bedroom and feeling uneasy in his presence. As the alleged site of the mistreatment, it's no shock that the place has some wicked demonic energy. Reports detail strange howling cries and deep scratches appearing in the flesh of workers. The current owner of the building, Terry Scott, even claimed that she was pushed by an invisible force. The presence was so evil that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism, but his efforts did little to keep the demonic energy at bay, and whatever monster lurked in there still remains, and I would not want to mess with it. Number 10. Malabar Farm. Malabar Farm was built in 1939 by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Louis Bromfield and was his home until his death in 1956. But before it was built, another family lived there in the 19th century. Celie Rose, a challenged young woman who lived there with her family, developed a romantic fixation on a neighborhood boy. When Celie's family told her to stop claiming the boy as her fiance, she mixed rat poison in their porridge. Her father and brother died, but her mother survived. At her trial, Celie couldn't understand why her parents didn't come to see her. After all, she said, the rats always came back after her daddy fed them rat poison in the barn. Afterwards, she went on and lived with her mother, whom, yes, she tried to kill, but then Celie poisoned her again, and this time it worked. At age 23, Celie stood trial truly alone, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a state hospital. She lived out the rest of her life in an insane asylum, and since then the house has been haunted. One visitor saw a woman dressed like Celie Rose outside the house. People have seen lights flicker, felt a phantom cat, disembodied voices are heard, and there's an overall eerie feeling on the property. Yeah. No kidding. Number 9. Beaver Creek State Park. Although this park is beautiful during the day, it has a darker side at night. A portion of the park was once part of a canal system from the early 1800s. There are 2 locks that are said to be haunted. Jake's Lock is said to be named after a former canal worker who was struck by lightning while walking across the top of the lock. He died instantly, but some claim that on certain nights, especially stormy ones, Jake returns with his ghostly lantern to continue his evening's work. Spooky. Nearby, Gretchen's Lock is said to be haunted by the ghost of a canal worker's daughter. Legend has it her father put her coffin inside the lock until he could load her body onto a ship headed for their homeland. But when the coffin was loaded onto a ship bound for home, the ship was lost at sea and didn't make it. Gretchen, pleading to rejoin her mother, reportedly makes an appearance at the lock every year on the anniversary of her death, which is just very sad. Number 8. The Wandle House. The Wandle House was constructed in 1916 by the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railway with funds contributed by railroaders. The Brewster Railroad YMCA featured 62 dormitory rooms used by the railroad workers, a restaurant, movie theater, and bowling alley. Today, the building is home to the Historical Society and houses memorabilia from baseball team photos, class pictures from Beach City and Brewster schools, railroad memorabilia and equipment, payroll records, and military uniforms. It's filled with tons of history, so those from from the past like to visit. While there, you might come across Teresa, who worked in the eatery around the 1940s and 50s. People have also reported hearing noises, seeing doorknobs turning on their own, and dark figures. And even one time, someone who was doing work in the basement of the building watched a person walk through a wall. Let me just say, I've seen a ghost walk through a wall before too, and it's creepy, so it's not something I'd like to see again. Number 7. Crybaby Bridge. Locals say if you stand on the Alliance Area Bridge at night, the sound of crying can be heard. Some say that mothers who did not want their sons or daughters during the baby boom would toss them from the bridge into the river below in the dark of the night. Others believe the cries stem from members of a cult kidnapping locals and ending their lives as part of their secret ritual. And finally, some say ghostly cries stem from a distraught mother who lost it after her daughter would not stop crying. In desperation, she tossed her over the bridge to her death, and upon realizing what she had done, the woman reportedly drove off the bridge her own life. This is all around sad and creepy, but if I heard crying noises without anyone around and on a bridge nonetheless, I would be terrified. Number 6. Old Chestnut Grove Cemetery. The story goes a woman accused of witchcraft was executed and buried at the cemetery. The townsfolk did not erect a marker, but instead built an iron fence around her grave, which was next to an old tree.
Use Kayak to find the hotel you want at the price you want. Download the Kayak app now.
Indentation next to the tree inside the fence marks her grave, and it said that bad things will happen to those who get close to her grave. Another variation of the story says that several witches were executed and buried here, and their ghosts continue to haunt this area, which does not shock me. Not only did this happen, but on December 29th, 1876, the number 5 Pacific Express was traveling over a high bridge carrying approximately 159 passengers and crew when the bridge collapsed. It sent the train and the people on it into the ravine below, and 92 people died. Many were burned alive while trapped inside the crushed cars and are buried in a mass grave at this cemetery. Due to this, people have seen ghosts of the passengers, and unexplained voices on tape have been recorded. Number 5. Malsalon Public Library. Let me just say, there's more than books in this building. Before it was a library, it was a house, and former residents Clara Baldwin Barrick and Annie Baldwin both died in the home. Claire lived in the home from 1895 to 1909, and her daughter-in-law Annie died in the home in 1931. This might explain why this place is haunted. Some visitors have heard footsteps or smelt an unfamiliar perfume. Employees get a chill with no explanation in the outreach room located in the basement of the former home. A patron once claimed to have been pushed by an apparition while in the library, and a security camera in the library caught the elevator traveling to the 3rd floor at 3 a.m. The doors opened and a bright light could be seen, and the phenomena has been caught on tape several times, and there is no explanation, and that is just like an immediate no. Director Sherry Brown, who has worked at the library since 1979, said she was working in her office, a former bedroom of the home, after the library closed when she thought she saw an employee walk past her office door. She yelled out but got no answer. When she investigated, she found no one. Paranormal investigators have conducted research in the library and have gotten responses from the ghosts during electronic voice phenomenon sessions, and if you thought libraries were boring, let me just say this one definitely isn't. Number 4. Lock 4 Park. An incident occurred here in 1857 which has resulted in the park being haunted. A canal worker, whom some say was the lock tender, may have been angry about the potential of work being shut down and wanted revenge. The angry worker doused his fellow workers with a container of acid or some type of caustic liquid. It said the enraged worker tossed the lid open and flung the contents on his fellow workers, dumping the remnants on himself. Legend states that no immediate deaths ensued, but rather the men suffered gruesome, slower deaths that took several days. A few men perished due to their acid-eaten skin and organs. The man responsible also died. Today, screams and moans of those who were burned by the acid supposedly can still be heard by some if they listen closely while visiting Lock 4 Park. Also, the lock tender's cabin, which is located in the park, may also be haunted by the spirit of the angry worker. Number 3. 3. Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle is reported to be the most haunted house in Ohio. Rumors about the eerie castle began to surface after multiple deaths occurred in the Tiedemann family while living in the mansion. The home was built in 1883 by Haynes Tiedemann, a banker and co-founder of the Union Banking and Savings Company. And let me just add that the house has 4 stories and more than 20 rooms and 80 windows. Now, Haynes allegedly tore down another house on the property where 4 of his children had died. His first wife, Lucia, died inside Franklin Castle in the 1890s. The American businessman would eventually bury 3 more of his children and his mother. Since then, the location has been the site of mysterious hauntings. A family with 6 children called the Romanos had moved into the house, and on the day they moved in, 2 of their children said they encountered a crying girl in white on the 3rd floor. But when Miss Romano investigated, no one was there. Soon, the family started hearing haunting organ music and heavy footsteps. 2 of the older Romano children woke up one night to find something yanking the blankets off their bed. And Miss Romano once awoke to find herself screaming on her bedroom floor, with an unseen presence screaming beside her. A priest advised the Romanos to move out, and in 1974, they did. But the hauntings didn't stop when the Romanos left. From there, the house was sold again and again and again. Each new occupant reported strange occurrences like passing through odd vapors, hearing a child crying, or seeing a woman in black standing in the window. Since reports of hauntings at Franklin's Castle increased, many turned their suspicions onto its original owner. Number 2. Sister Century House Restaurant. Now a restaurant, this building has seen a lot in the past. It was built in 1870 and has been home to several businesses in historic Canal Fulton throughout the years. It currently houses a family-owned restaurant, but was most notably home to a crematorium, which was located in the basement back in the early 1900s. I mean, since this place was once filled with dead people, it's no shock that it's haunted. There have been rumors of shadow people, a poltergeist in the kitchen, ghostly ladies in the basement, the entrance to an old tunnel, and even an unusual room that makes people a bit dizzy. The food, though, seems to be great, as the restaurant has a 4.6-star rating, so if you want to see some ghosts and have a great meal, I suggest you check this place out. And coming in at number 1, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory opened its doors on September 15, 1896 to its first 150 offenders. These prisoners were brought by train from Columbus and put immediately to work on the prison sewer system in the 25-foot stone